Radha Madhava Jabihari Gopi Janavalabha Girivadadari Jaya Gopi Janavalabha Girivadadari Ashodanandana Raja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Raja Jana Ranjana Jamunatira Avanachari Jamunatira Avanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabihari Jaya Gopi Janavalabha Girivadadari Yashodanandana Raja Jana Ranjana Jamunatira Avanachari Jamunatira Avanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namaskritcharam Chaivo Nirottamam Devim Saraswati Rasam Tatkoram Divyat Asta Praeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Vataya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. Thank you for all your enthusiasm. I think I was here once before, many years ago, but it came at a time where I did not have a room full of enthusiastic devotees, such as yourselves. So it's very enlivening to see all of you, very inspiring. So I think we just read through should someone like to start us off reading through on chapter 15?
We're on page 247. In Dwaraka, Jarasandha attacks. Asti and Prapti comes as widows, feeling dispossessed, left Mathura and went back to their parents in distress. Jarasandha, their father, ruler of Magha's state, was furious to hear about his daughter's husband's fate. Jarasandha, a powerful and cruel wicked man, announced, "I vow to rid the world of Krishna and his clan." Then, feeling sure his troops would quickly smash the opposition, he launched a siege of Mathura with 23 divisions. When they saw this attacking army swelling like a sea, the citizens of Mathura felt great anxiety. Though Krishna saw conditions he could easily adjust. He comes for certain reasons, so he started thinking thus. So many soldiers, chariots, and elephants have come. I'm here to lift earth's burdens, and this force is surely won. They all shall die, but I shall free Jarasandha, for then he'll go away and recreate his army once again. I save those who are pious and destroy those who are not. So I shall end this army and the suffering they've wrought. In other days, in other ways, in other sites and climes, I have vanquished irreligion when it flares from time to time. At once, 2 golden transcendental chariots appeared, complete with horses, drivers, shields, and military gear. His chakra in his hand and golden helmet on his head, Lord Krishna called for Balaram and courteously said, "Respected elder brother, your dependents need your help. Your chariots and weapons are awaiting your good self. Remove these evil soldiers from this planet, if you please. For after all, we've come to Earth to save the devotees." Resplendent in their armor and without a moment's wait, the brothers and 100 men rode past the city gates. Although his force was tiny, Krishna's mighty conch shell blast alarmed Jarasandha and the divisions he'd amassed. Jarasandha looked mockingly at Krishna and declared, "I will not fight with you, mere boy, for that would be unfair. You killed your uncle Kamsa. Go away, you craven fool. Now, Balaram, if you're not scared, I'll fight you in a duel." Said Krishna, "Heroes never boast. They simply show their skill. You speak deceits like these to ease your fear of being killed." And then, as dust obscures a flame or clouds obscure the sun, the army circled Krishna's troops, 4,000 men to 1. When Krishna was surrounded and from all appearance doomed, the women looking on from Mathura felt faint and swooned. The archers of Jarasandha fired arrows by the score, so Krishna drew his fabled bow, which all the gods adore. Lord Krishna's arrows, razor sharp, became an endless blaze that slaughtered men on horse and foot who rushed him from all ways. The horses, men, and elephants fell dead in great surprise, as Krishna's arrows split their heads and sliced their arms and thighs. The severed necks and limbs of man and beast released their blood, which grew into a current that became a crimson flood. That bloody river's snakes were arms, its turtles severed heads, and islands formed where elephants lay in that river dead. The hands and thighs appeared like fish, the human hair like weeds. Abandoned bows were ripples, other weapons brush and reeds. The floating wheels of chariots revolved like swirling pools. The gravel in that bloody stream was ornaments and jewels. The flow of blood, which shocked those souls who watched with timid eyes, aroused a sense of great relief and joy among the wise. Lord Krishna used his arrows and Lord Balaram his plow, and neither showed a speck of perspiration on their brows. Why should one be surprised when God annihilates his foes? For he creates and dictates all, as everybody knows. Though Krishna has no need to fight, no kingdom to be gained, his actions can attract lost souls, as sages have explained. Jarasandha's great army was completely put to death. Jarasandha was caught and bound, the only demon left. But Krishna ordered him released. He had a plan to fill. So Balaram untied his ropes, obliging Krishna's will. Jarasandha, once highly honored, trudged away in shame and pledged himself to penance to restore his tarnished name. But then his friends persuaded him that he should fight again. They said, "Your loss is just the cost one pays for former sins." Lord Krishna entered Mathura. He hadn't lost a man. The gods tossed fragrant flowers and a festival began. The people, freed of fearfulness and ready to rejoice, cheered loud and long as bards raised song in strong, proficient voice. As conches blared and kettle drums laid down a booming beat, the citizens strung banners and splashed perfume in the streets. The flutes and venas sweetly played as priests sang Vedic hymns, and everyone felt happier than they had ever been. The women gazed at Krishna with affection-laden eyes and showered him with garlands, blooms, and freshly toasted rice. The Lord, whose glance had liberated all the slaughtered men, presented Ugrasen, the king, with piles of captured gems. Again, Jarasandha assembled soldiers by the score, but Krishna cut down everyone, just as he'd done before. And still another 15 times the fool launched vain attacks. And as the soldiers fell, the overburdened earth relaxed.
Instructing Dwaraka. As Krishna's plan unfurled and ran precisely on its course, Jarasandha began to build another fighting force. However, Kalyavana, a beast, arrived there first, with soldiers by the millions to turn Mathura to dirt. Lord Krishna said to Balaram about this latest threat, "An ancient curse upon the Yadus has this rogue upset. Jarasandha could come while Kalyavana attacks and steal or kill our relatives behind our very backs. We must construct a fortress that will keep away these beasts, so everyone in Mathura again can live in peace. We'll call this fortress Dwaraka. I'll set it up tonight. We'll relocate our citizens, then come back here to fight." Lord Balaram agreed in full, so Krishna instantly produced a fort 100 miles wide within the sea. We couldn't float a single stone, but Krishna's God. As such, he floats the stars and planets, so for him this wasn't much. The fortress, known as Dwaraka, stood tall and bright and grand. Broad avenues surrounded public parks on ample land that boasted fragrant trees and wines that demigods supplied, along with golden gates and spires that seemed to touch the sky. The houses, too, were made of gold, with emeralds for floors, fine gem-encrusted crowns, and golden pots outside their doors. The dwellings were luxurious for every rank and class, with watchtowers and temple rooms and stables made of brass. Lord Krishna's many palaces lined clean, enormous streets. The gods each brought a certain gift to make the fort complete. From heaven, Indra brought a Parijata tree and the Sudharma meeting hall, where all gained immortality. Varuna offered horses of a most distinctive kind, with varied hues, both white and blue, and swifter than the mind. Kuvera gave 8 mystic gifts, assuring all of wealth, and other gods and goddesses gave richly of themselves. The people went to sleep in Mathura that mystic night, and woke up in their rich new homes, amazed in great delight. And meanwhile, Balaram and Krishna planned new strategies to end the threat designed and set by these two enemies.
The death of Kalyavana. That morning, Kalyavana's enormous brutish force saw Krishna exit Mathura without a bow or horse. They seethed to see that Krishna held them in such low respect that he would walk outside unarmed, a garland on his neck. When Kalyavana saw Krishna nonchalant and bold, he noted how his enemy was pleasant to behold. The Lord's dark blue complexion and his eyes tinged lotus pink made Kalyava look twice, stand still, and crudely think. This Krishna has the mark known as Srivatsa on his chest. The famed Kastuma gem hangs on his neck. He has the rest of Vishnu's special qualities, as Narada describes. But he's insulted me, so I shall tear him up alive. So Kalyava threw down his weapons on the spot and dashed off after Krishna, sure he'd easily be caught. Lord Krishna turned and ran away, the fiend in hot pursuit, a fool absorbed in hope to apprehend the absolute. Remaining just beyond the range of every grasp he gave, Lord Krishna guided Kalyavana inside a cave. The fiend cried, "Stop, you coward! Now your reputation's stained." But he could not catch Krishna, for his karma still remained. Lord Krishna ran inside the cave, ignoring these remarks. When Kaliyava ran in, he stumbled in the dark. Upon a man who lay at rest and gave him no regard, he runs, lies down, and hides. The demon cried and kicked him hard. The sleeping man was someone else who'd long been resting there. He lifted heavy eyelids, looked about, and grew aware of Kaliyavana, who stood by, staring unabashed. Those sleepy eyes fell on the demon, burning him to ash. King Vishnurata, listening for hours without a word, at once put forth this question after hearing what occurred. Who was this man who lived in caves and yet was so adept that he could burn to ashes one who woke him when he slept? Said Shukadev, this man named Mucukunda was renowned as one who cared for brahmanas and who always kept his vow. He once enjoyed a kingdom, but he set his throne aside when Indra came to him and begged, the gods are terrified. The demons have attacked us and we fear they may succeed. Since you're the strongest mortal king famous for your deeds, take up your sword, lead our forces, and when the war is through, the gods will do whatever you may wish for them to do. So he fought for years till Shiva's son took charge of heaven's troops. The god said, Mucukunda, you have been most resolute. Since we no longer need you, we release you from your vow. So if you want a benediction, ask of it of us now. Yet aside a kingdom that was strong and unopposed, and so you set aside a kingdom that was strong and unopposed, and selflessly took up the heavy task that we proposed. Because you went to heaven, though to stop the demons' crimes, your children, queens, and friends have died. They lived on mortal time. A minute passed in heaven is a year for earthly men. Yet even here the hand of God as time will do us in. Now take your choice of boons from us to savor while you live, except for liberation, for which the Lord alone can give. Well, if that's the case, said Mucukunda, what could I desire? My kingdom's gone. I've fought so long. I've become so tired that all I can look forward to is long and peaceful rest. So this, O God, shall be my benediction, I request. Allow me to remain asleep for days or weeks or years, as long as I may wish. And if someone should interfere, let's say a god in peril who implores me to return, a glance from my awakened eyes will make that person burn. The gods could understand that Mucukunda wanted peace. They granted his bizarre request and gave him his release. So Mucukunda found a place where he could never wake till foolish Kaliyavana performed his last mistake. Then Krishna, who knew of this, revealed his splendid form before King Mucukunda, who was instantly transformed. Astonished by the beautiful effulgence he displayed, the pious king stared straight at Krishna, shook his head and prayed, who are you? Why have such soft feet traversed this thorny ground? Are you Lord Indra, Chandra, Agni, someone more renowned? You must be God himself, for in this cave as dark as night, the luster of your body has filled everything with light. The king explained his story and the vow he undertook and said, your luster stuns me. I can scarcely bear to look. My Lord, please tell me of yourself if that would be allowed. Lord Krishna, pleased, replied in words as deep as rumbling clouds. My dear king, my births are thousands and my name's the same amount. In fact, I have more births and names than I can even count. If one could count Earth's particles of dust on hands and knees, he'd still not count my births or names, my deeds or qualities. Great sages list my present, past, and future deeds, dear friend. Despite their patient efforts, they have never reached the end. Some time ago, Brahma requested me to save the earth. So I became the son of Vasudeva and took this birth. Through me, Pralamba, Kamsa, and their kind men met their demise. Now you burn Kaliyavana, this demon, with your eyes. Since in the past, repeatedly, you've offered prayers to me, I've met you in this cave, for I am inclined to devotees. My dear and saintly Mucukunda, take some blessing, please. I'll give you anything you ask and put your mind at ease. If someone somehow satisfies and proves himself to me, he never need again lament or suffer misery.
On hearing this, the king bowed down his forehead to the ground. Sage Garga had foretold he'd see the Lord, and now he found the Lord himself had come to him in such a perfect way. Rejoicing in his fortune, Mucukunda gently prayed, My Lord, the men and women of this world are most confused by your divine illusion, thus they fail to worship you. Oblivious to their own good, they build up families that fail to bring them happiness and cause them misery. A soul who squanders human life, forgetting you will dwell within some mortal home, as if a beast trapped in a well. Intoxicated by my wealth, my wives, and my domain, I thought myself this mortal flesh and suffered endless pain. I arrogantly raised an army, roamed the earth, and thought my body was eternal, though it's obviously not. A greedy fool like me ignores you till you come at last, as death, a hungry snake devouring blind and helpless rats. A body riding elephants or chariots of gold is called the king and flaunted for the public to behold. And then your endless form of time renames that royal corpse as feces, worms, or ashes when its lifetime runs its course. I conquered all directions. When my splendid throne was raised, my former enemies bowed down before me and gave praise. But when I went to see my queen, my sovereignty was gone, and I became her pet, a helpless beast to be led on. A king desiring happiness performs austerity and overcomes his self-important, proud mentality. When one stops chasing matter, he may meet your devotee and gain a realization of your true supremacy. To see you here has ended my affection for my throne. A wise king leaves his empire for the woods and lives alone. Devotees serve your lotus feet. Please let me do the same. Why should I ask a boon that brings entanglement and pain? Henceforward, I renounce those things I used to want to do. Relieved of such attachments, may I now depend on you? You have no designations. You are undiluted proof that nature, goodness, darkness, passion, can't obscure the truth. My senses can't be satisfied. They'll never give me peace. I'm trapped and burning in this world and cannot gain release. Protect me, Lord. The world is just a dangerous masquerade. To serve your lotus feet will make me pleased and unafraid. The Lord replied, great ruler, you've a clear and potent mind. You could have taken any boon from me were you inclined. I offered you some blessing just to prove that you are pure. The honor of my unalloyed devotees is secure. Though yogis master breathing drills, their inner mental states remains a site for sensual desire to incubate. Your mind has no such problem. It is simply fixed on me. Now wander where you will with your unfailing loyalty. Because you are a Kshatriya, you've killed both man and beast, incurring many sins from which you now must be released. Perform your penance in this life, and surely in the next, you'll come back as a Brahmin and achieve complete success. King Mucukunda honored Krishna, left the cave and smiled. Of course, he had not been outside at all in quite a while. The Kali age has come, the monarch quickly realized. The people, beasts, and trees he saw had shrunk in rank and size. The sober king was firm and transcendental. Going forth, he reached Badarikashram in the distant frigid north. He worshipped Lord Narayan and remained there peacefully, in constant thought of Krishna through severe austerity.
Well, it's pretty dramatic. It's nice. This is a nice pastime. It's amazing what Balakamp has done to take this huge work of the Bhagavatam and condense it into these poetic chapters, capturing the essence. That's quite wonderful. In the beginning here, in verse 2 and 3, he mentions these troops, right? These troops and these 23 divisions coming up like a sea. So I was curious. How can troops, you think of troops as a relatively small number like a sea, but if you look up the actual numbers, what's being referred to is these divisions, these 23 divisions. So one division, this is just a little curiosity I found, one division, it's called an Akshahini division. It's a total of 218,000 people. It's 21,000 soldiers riding on elephants, 21,000 charioteers, 65,000 cavalrymen, 109,000 infantry soldiers. So that's just one division, 218,000, but he had 23 of them. So it's about 5 million people. So this, like a sea, is true. This is what's coming to attack. I think in Miami is like 6 million people or something. So it's like the entire population. One division, 218,000 is more than everything in Gainesville. I think everybody, man, woman, and child in Gainesville is just under 200,000, 180, according to census or whatever, 185,000, I think. So it's a lot of people. And that was just one time, and then 17 times this happened. So it's pretty dramatic that Krishna is without breaking a sweat or incurring any effort, him and Balaram dealt with all these angry aggressors. But what's even more interesting is this is secondary to Krishna's appearance. Krishna it's like if you're going on a hike to the top of a hill or to some peak, and on the way there's a little lake, and you might stop and skip some stones across the water. You ever done that, skipping stones? Because it's fun, but that's not your purpose. You didn't go out there to skip stones. You have a bigger journey to take your day-long hike, and this is just a few minutes of fun that you do on the way. So this is Krishna's mood towards all this killing business, all these demons, just to relieve the pressure on the earth of these unpious persons. He'll do that, but it's not his real reason for coming. Because they can be killed in so many ways, through earthquakes or fires or other calamities. His real reason for coming is to give pleasure to his devotees, to attract them and engage with them. And that's highlighted here in the last couple of verses here of this this verse. Krishna, he says to Mucukunda, because you've offered prayers to the past, this barbaric Kalyavana, that's like, Krishna want to take the time personally kill him. He'll say, I'll let Mucukunda deal with him. I want to go see Mucukunda. He wasn't too concerned with Kalyavana. And he remembered this service. And he says here that in order to glorify, one thing Krishna loves to do is glorify his devotees. He takes great pleasure in this. And so he tested Mucukunda, apparently appears to test him, saying, okay, you've done so much service, let me give you some, and you offered these nice prayers. So what can I give you? Let me offer you something in return. And Mucukunda wasn't interested. He said, look, I've been around long enough to know that anything I could ask is just, what's the point of material benedictions or other so-called boons? Just let me engage in your service. That's all I want, if you're offering me something. And this is a very common response from devotees. And so Krishna says, interestingly, he says, yes, he knows that this is Mucukunda's answer, and that's why he appears to test him, but he's just bringing out, he's just showing, this is the purity of my devotee. They don't want anything but me. And this theme is throughout the pastimes of Krishna and the Bhagavatam, that his devotees, there's a famous incident where a devotee was offended by Dwaraka Muni, and it's kind of a long story. He was chased around, and so finally he goes to everyone, the demigods, Lord Brahma, Indra, and finally he comes to Krishna. He says, "You're so merciful. Give me some protection." He said, "I can't give you any protection." He said, "But in your heart resides so much compassion." He said, "I don't have a heart. I have nothing to give. I can't help you." And Dwaraka was shocked. He said, "Well, what do you mean? You're famous for being compassionate." He said, "No, my devotees, they worship me selflessly without wanting anything in return. So there's nothing I can offer my devotees that will satisfy them. There's no benediction I can give them because they just want me. So the only thing I can give my devotees that will satisfy them, I owe them. They do such nice service. They give themselves, so I have to give them something. But the only thing they'll accept is my heart. So I'll just give them my heart. And then my devotees are happy, but because I gave it to them, I have nothing to give you. If you want some compassion for me, you have to go to my devotees because they own me. They have everything of value." So Dwaraka Muni understood then he had to go back to Ambarish, who he offended, and ask him for mercy and compassion. And of course, devotees very compassionate. So this is Krishna's mood here with Mucukunda. All the war business and all that, that's just, yes, that's some little play he'll do with Balaram for fun. Let's go out. And they're young boys, so they have some energy, and they'll go and take care of all these ungodly persons. But his real pleasure is to go and and see Mucukunda and give him this this praise and show the world that he's actually what's in his heart of hearts is very pure. And so he wanted to highlight that. Is at least for me one of the aspects of this pastime that really comes out. And now I have a question for you. In the end here, he tells Mucukunda, yes, this is fine, you'll remember me, but because you committed these acts previously when you were fighting the wars for the demigods, you killed so many people, so now you have to go and perform some penance to purify yourself. So my question is this, here's Mucukunda, we all desire as spiritual practitioners, as devotees of Krishna, we're trying to attain Krishna's mercy. And ideally, if we had the personal darshan to be with Krishna, that's the perfection of life. There's nothing else we would need. So Mucukunda gets that, and Krishna tells him, but you need to now go and get purified. So how is it that Mucukunda now had to go and perform further penance to get purified, although he's there personally in the presence of Krishna? How does that work? Why did Krishna tell him that? Why did Mucukunda have to do that? Yes.
And he said he had to take another birth.
Yes. Yeah, he had to take another birth. And the end of the story, I mean, he took another birth. He was a Brahmin, very fixed, and then after that birth, he was liberated. So it was a short spell. But why couldn't he have been liberated? There's many places that we have seen in the scriptures where just getting Krishna's association, that's purification. So he should have been purified right then and there. Why did he have to take another birth? Why did he have to go on further? So that's my question for all of you wise spiritual practitioners. The hand back there.
I was just thinking that, like an example of Dhruva Maharaj, the same thing, so I was just thinking on the point that maybe Krishna knew his heart, and that even though Mucukunda said what he said, maybe inside his heart, he was not fully at that stage yet, to just go back to Godhead. That's just what comes
Yes,
to mind.
that's definitely, you're on the right track. That is not incorrect. Yes.
I'd like to add to that question, something that we were just studying last week, where Srila Prabhupada mentioned, he was talking about specifically he addressed that these things were done in his service as a Kshatriya. So Srila Prabhupada mentioned, just like on a train, you have first class, second class, third class, and so forth on the train. He says, but it's not when the train goes to the station and arrives at the destination, it's not that the second class doesn't arrive or the third class doesn't arrive. Everyone arrives. So it adds to the question. It's not an answer, but it adds more to the actual question. And I thought I was going to ask you that question.
So let me understand your question is, I missed it.
Okay. Specifically, Krishna says that you acquired these sins in his role as a Kshatriya.
Right.
So he's saying because you acted in that role, then you have to take another birth to become a Brahmana. So Srila Prabhupada in the class, and I could pull it up, but he gave the example
of the train with the car.
Yeah, the train, meaning that even one in a second class position by following in a
Still gets to the destination.
Yeah, he arrives at the destination. And it's not that he arrives at the destination at a later time than the first class. Like the first class gets there like, half hour earlier or something like that. They arrive at the same time.
So that I follow. What's the question?
So it would seem that those two things are contradictory.
Why Mucukunda had to wait, and then yet the train arrives with first,
And
second,
to
third class
become a
people?
Brahmana, which is considered the first class compartment.
Right.
Yes.
So it's like his train got cut loose, so the train arrived, and he was in the caboose, and it still got left
Exactly.
behind.
Seemingly.
Yes, it does appear that way. Yes.
I think Krishna told him to do that because it was obviously what Mucukunda wanted to do. because Mucukunda, he's saying that he's like, I renounce these things, and and my senses can't be satisfied. So I just want to think about you. I want to give up all my kingly things. So he clearly is in this mood where he wants to go and to a mountain and perform austerities and just think about Krishna. And he was a really great Kshatriya, and he was all about war and stuff, but he's like, no, I want to be austere. And he like that's clearly something he wants to do. So Krishna wants him to be happy, so he's like, okay, so yeah, I'd love the rest of this life. You don't have to be a warrior Kshatriya anymore. You can go and do penances and just think of me, and the next life you can just do that the entire life, and then you can come back to me. How does that sound? And Mucukunda's like, oh, that sounds great.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. And that's a little similar to the answer here is consciousness. That's where his consciousness was. So I have two, one here and one here. Yes.
So there are places in, I believe, the first or second canto, a couple of different times where Srila Prabhupada makes the statement that hearing Srimad Bhagavatam is, you get the same benefit as if you were in the presence of the Lord's original form. So we don't hear Srimad Bhagavatam just once and go back to Godhead, because bhakti requires our participation, it requires our devotion. And not all of us are purified in the same amount of time, or we make different stages of progress based upon Krishna reciprocates with us according to our surrender. And so obviously I think this is the same as the first answer, but
Yeah, and that's
someone may hear Srimad Bhagavatam once and go right back to Godhead, but another person may take 40 years.
yes, I've experienced that. Okay, microphone.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Two possible answers. First is Krishna, one of the reasons for him to come is to reestablish regular principles. So in Kshatriyas, usually it was like what Pandavas did, at the end of their lives, they go to Mahaprasthata, I think it's called, when they go to the mountains, so they take austerity. So he establishes as a principle for Kshatriyas to follow that. And second possibility is that in spite of it, Krishna can give liberation just by his presence and us observing him, but higher than that is what Krishna wants us to do. So in that sense, if that's Krishna's desire, we should follow it. That should be our priority.
So I think these answers are all correct. They kind of get to the point, as I understand it, that, and these are good, thank you. That Mucukunda's consciousness, he was seeing Krishna. Although he was seeing Krishna, his relationship with him was more like Vishnu. It was more awe and reverence. He was seeing Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And I once gave a talk in New Vrindavan, and the basic subject was, we don't worship God, we worship Krishna. And of course, Krishna is God, but devotees, they're not really interested that Krishna's God. It's just like the wife or the children of a judge. Yeah, he's a judge and he's powerful, but we don't really care. We just want to go play with him. Whatever he does out in the world, that's for other people to respect him. We just want to jump on him and beat him up and drag him around because he's dad, or they see him as the person they love. And so this degree of love Mucukunda did not have. He had awe and reverence, so he still needed to purify his consciousness some. And in terms of the train and the caboose, it's yes, he did attain. He arrived there. You can go to Vaikuntha, you can worship the Lord and be delivered to the spiritual world, and that's perfection. Vaikuntha is spiritual perfection. But most devotees aren't interested in Vaikuntha. They're not interested in spiritual perfection. They're not interested in God or opulence or power, or they're interested in loving interactions with Krishna. Where Krishna, close your eyes and let me put this pakora in your mouth. And Krishna closes his eyes and they put a flower in instead. And Krishna makes a funny face. So that's a funny tasting pakora. And everyone laughs. They're not interacting. If you see him as God, you can't do that. You can't tease God like that. It's very difficult. But they just see him as their best friend. And so I gave a couple examples of this purification. One is the story you may have heard of Mucukunda in Lord Chaitanya's pastimes. Mucukunda Das, he had associated with some persons who were speaking a little bit impersonal philosophy. So Lord Chaitanya was not real pleased with him. And Lord Chaitanya was giving tons of mercy to all his devotees except Mucukunda. And they asked, the devotees say, well, what about Mucukunda? Can he come? He said, no, he's an offender. He needs to stay outside. And Mucukunda thought, well, if I can't have the association of Lord Chaitanya, then I might as well just find a rope and tie a rock around it and throw myself in the river and end my life, because if I can't get Lord Chaitanya's mercy, then what's the point of living? And he said, but just before so that was his resolve. He said, well, that's what I'm going to do. But before I do it, let me just ask the devotees a question. Can you ask Lord Chaitanya, I understand I'm not getting his mercy right now, but will I ever get his mercy? And Lord Chaitanya says, yes, in 100 million lifetimes, or I forget the number, some huge number, not one or two. Yes, in many, many hundreds of lifetimes, he'll get my mercy. And so what would you do if you were, trying to apply for a job or trying to get some benediction and you were told, yeah, come back in 50 or 80 years? Would you be happy about that? Or do you feel a little discouraged? I'd feel very discouraged. I better go find something else to do. I can't wait that long. But Mucukunda was ecstatic. Oh, 100 million lifetimes, I'll get his mercy. He started dancing. He was just in total ecstasy. And so much that he was creating a commotion. And Lord Chaitanya heard, what's all this noise out there? What's going on? And everybody said, well, that's Mucukunda. He's dancing in ecstasy because he said, eventually he'll get your mercy. And Mucukunda said, bring him in here now. I want to see him. So what Mucukunda did was, through that enthusiasm, he burned away the karma of 100 million lifetimes and got Lord Chaitanya's mercy immediately on the spot. How did he burn through it? Because whatever offense he committed that caused Chaitanya to keep him back, that was removed immediately from the enthusiasm. So that shows us the potency of enthusiasm. And then immediately he got Lord Chaitanya's mercy. So that's one example of how our consciousness can be purified through effort or enthusiasm or something. The other one is the gopis, famous case, but Krishna it's the pinnacle, right, of our spiritual understanding, is that the topmost activity to engage is to dance with Krishna, right? That's what this book is about, dancing with Krishna. So the gopis, they would dance with Krishna, not for their pleasure, but to give Krishna pleasure. But some of them weren't allowed to go. They were held back from their children or their husbands or some cause. And they would just, the dance, can you imagine this event's going on? There's a big, huge kirtan. This happened to me once when I was a young devotee. There's a huge kirtan down in San Diego. And I was living with Mucukunda Maharaj and I was doing different computer service. So this is going to be ecstatic. So many devotees are coming down, a huge Harinam. And I was looking forward to it. And then just as we're getting ready to leave, Mucukunda Maharaj turns to me and says, I need you to stay here and man the phones in case somebody calls, because he was doing press release. And if they call, you can tell them where to meet us. I was like, my heart's already like down there in the kirtan and now I have to not go. It was very painful. So some of these gopis weren't allowed to go to the dance. And so they were held back. And that burning desire, that intense feeling of, I want to be over there and over here, that they had some little subtle trace of something in their consciousness, and that was burned away. And then the next night they were able to go. So the point is that Mucukunda didn't have that pure, unalloyed, let me serve Krishna for the pleasure of serving Krishna, not even because I get pleasure out of it. Our highest, our highest goal, let me give Krishna pleasure, even if it causes me pain. Even if it's some discomfort or some difficulty inquired, if Krishna needs something and I can give it to him, and by giving it to him, I undergo some difficulty, that difficulty becomes pleasurable because the end result is Krishna is happy. And when Krishna is happy, Because Krishna is in the heart of hearts. Krishna, we're part and parcel of Krishna. If Krishna is happy, we're happy. I mean, happiness doesn't even describe. When Krishna is happy, we're there. We've arrived, you know. So that's the measurement of happiness for a devotee is Krishna happy? Yes, then I'm happy. Whatever it took to give him that is inconsequential. It's like the goal is his happiness. So Mucukunda didn't quite have that degree of devotion. He had still some honor reverence. He understood who Krishna was, and he was pure in a sense. So he's still part of the train. He still gets the spiritual perfection of, and Krishna told him, yes, go about as you do these activities. You won't forget me. You'll remember me. You'll be engaged. You're not going to fall in the material world. You'll always, be connected in that way. So I think that would be my answer to this question. And I think all the answers you gave are included in that they're correct, that Mucukunda was still part of the train that arrived, but we just sometimes need, and as you mentioned, we read the Bhagavatam over and over. There's layers and layers and degrees to which our devotion increases. So these activities, although they give us satisfaction, we don't stop doing them because it's ever increasing. Does that answer the Prabhu's question with the train? That was a good question. Does anyone else have any other questions related to this topic or anything else? I think we don't have a lot of time left, but yes.
So something that I'm still feeling unclear about, there's two different levels. There's purity, full unalloyed purity versus traces of impurity. That's the one level. But then there's also awe and reverence versus complete just sweetness and intimacy. So were both those things the case, that Mucukunda still had some material desires, but he also didn't actually want to serve God in the awe and reverence mood, or Krishna knew that that's not the relationship they had?
Yeah, it's a good question. I would combine the two, the mood of awe and reverence. Of course, I have to be careful when I say this. The mood of awe and reverence, I would put in the same category as some still slight trace of imperfection. In one sense, worshiping Krishna out of reverence is perfect, as God, and he is great. So having that is a valid relationship with him. But it's not satisfying. There's a nice verse, so I don't know if I can remember it, in the Bhagavatam. Saiva Pumsam Paro Dharma Yato Bhakti Adhokshaje Ahaituki Apiti Hata Yayatma Suprasiditi. You get that right? So for the soul to be completely satisfied, one has to have two things. He has to have uninterrupted, unmotivated service to Krishna. So we're not doing it for ourselves. There's no motivation. We expect nothing in return. We're doing it for Krishna's pleasure. And it has to never stop. It has to be uninterrupted. So if those two things are present, the soul is completely satisfied. And I would speculate, I had this question when I read this. Why did Mucukunda have to go? And I don't understand. He's there. Krishna's here. But it did mention he's seeing this awe and reverence. It's not completely unmotivated. Awe and reverence, it's hard to be completely unmotivated. But when you see God as God, because you're expecting okay, I have to worship him or else. I mean, he's great and I'm not. So there's a formality there, which is subtle, but there's a little formality. The thing that this gives you, this aprakriti apritihata, can never say those words right, unmotivated and uninterrupted, what results from that is a happiness that never ends and always increases. So if we want that happiness, there's so many things we can do to try to get pleasure. And I've done many of them, and it doesn't usually work out well because they come to an end or they get dull. And then when they come to an end, you're not happy anymore. And then they get dull, they get boring, you're not happy. So to have a happiness that never ends and always increases, That's only comes from the spiritual realm or spiritual energy, and it only comes when you have unmotivated, uninterrupted service. So that's a long-winded answer, which I'm known for. I don't know if that answers your question or not. Let's have time for more.
Thank you very much for this wonderful class. Yeah, I just wanted to contribute kind of how I see the ending of this this pastime, which is like, so the spiritual world, it's not like, it is a place, but it's more about consciousness, right? Because we as spirit souls, we have nothing to do with matter. So it's like, so it's not like, oh, well, he is, he's obviously impure because he didn't get, whoosh, like he didn't like leave his body and like go somewhere else, right? It's like I see Mucukunda as like he's already in Vaikuntha because that's where his consciousness is. The thing is that, as you said, the goal of the devotee is to love Krishna exactly the way Krishna wants to be loved. Krishna wants to be loved the way Mother Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj love him, the residents of Vrindavan love him. So imagine if somebody comes up to you and it's like, hey, like, I want to be your friend. I want to hang out together and play and do all these things. That's what I really want. And you're like, oh, yes, my lord, like it's just like, it's not, you're not exactly at the point where you're like, yes, I will love you exactly the way you want, So to me, that's like kind of the difference between Vaikuntha and Goloka and Vrindavan. And it's like, so Mucukunda's consciousness, he's already at that Vaikuntha level, but yeah, he needs a little bit more to get to that Goloka Vrindavan level. So that's kind of how I see it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's not pure love of God. There's a very profound statement. I'm not sure which verse it is. It's the third canto in one of the purports, and then there's a book that has different lectures that Srila Prabhupada gave on different verses. And in there is a statement Prabhupada makes, and it's not the only place. He says this in a few different places. But the reality is, you're right, the spiritual world is not a place. And the deeper reality is, we never really left the spiritual world. We're not, there is no such thing as a material world. The material world is consciousness. It's a state of consciousness. All energy is connected to Krishna. Material energy comes from Krishna. Therefore, ultimately, everything is Krishna's energy. Everything is spiritual. But when we see it disconnected from Krishna, it appears material and it functions, and it behaves as material energy because that's our relationship with it. But it's a very profound, statement Prabhupada makes that actually we never left the spiritual world. We're just forgotten. We've just forgotten Krishna and forgotten who we are. So it's not a place we have to go to. It could be said to be far away from here because that consciousness is so different from what we're trained to see here. But the spiritual world is a state of consciousness, and you can attain that while in this material body. You can be in the spiritual world. So that's a good point. It's kind of a mind bender to try to fully understand, but yeah, he still had that Vaikuntha consciousness. It's funny that one of the pastimes of Krishna, he lost in some game with the cowherd boys, and therefore someone had to ride on his back, and he didn't want to do it. And he said, well, I don't have to do that. I'm God. So actually, I don't have to do it. And cowherd boys just laughed and said, yeah, you can say whatever you want, but you still have to do it. You lost. So they don't care. They don't see him that way. And they don't, even if they did, they don't care. It's just like, no, that doesn't matter. You can give yourself whatever title you want, but you're our friend. And this gives Krishna pleasure. And it's Vrindavan mood. Krishna turns over the keys. He lets the devotee's love control him because that gives him pleasure. And so this consciousness, Mucukunda hadn't fully attained. So anyway, that's about all of my thoughts on this chapter. I guess I'll stop there. I think I've gone over my time. Antraya Shambhagavatam ki jai. Hare Krishna.